My wife said, I invited my ex-lover to my sister's wedding. He's family. If you love me, you'd understand. I replied, I do understand. Then I quietly contacted her ex-lover's wife and invited her as my plus one. The rehearsal dinner became legendary when. So there I was, sitting at my future mother-in-law's dining table, drowning in the kind of lasagna that makes you question whether heaven is real or just an Italian grandmother's kitchen. The garlic bread was warm, the wine was flowing, and I was honestly thinking this might be one of those perfect Sunday dinners where nothing goes wrong and everyone leaves with Tupperware full of leftovers and zero emotional damage. Yeah, I should have known better. I really should have known better. Because just as I was reaching for my third piece of garlic bread, don't judge me, that butter herb situation was insane. My wife Jessica decided to drop a conversational grenade right into the middle of the marinara sauce. I invited my ex-lover, Trevor, to my sister's wedding, she said, casual as someone commenting on the weather. He's family. If you love me, you'd understand. I'm not exaggerating when I say I almost turned that garlic bread into a murder weapon via choking hazard. My throat closed up like a bank vault. My eyes started watering. And for a solid 5 seconds, I genuinely thought I was about to die at a family dinner because my wife just announced she invited her ex to a wedding like it was the most normal thing in the world. Her mom was still smiling, passing the salad bowl around like her daughter hadn't just nuked our marriage with a single sentence. Her dad was obliviously cutting his lasagna into perfect little squares. Meanwhile, I was sitting there having what I can only describe as an out-of-body experience, watching myself nod like some kind of enlightened monk who just got smacked upside the head with a sandal. I do understand, I heard myself say, and honestly, I don't know who that guy was because it sure as hell wasn't me. The real me, the one screaming inside my head, was already writing divorce papers in Comic Sans just to add insult to injury. But outwardly, I was the picture of calm acceptance. I nodded. I smiled. I even took another bite of lasagna like my entire world hadn't just tilted sideways into the twilight zone. Inside, though, I was running full-speed mental simulations of this wedding disaster. I could see it all playing out like some nightmare rom-com that nobody asked for. Trevor catching the bouquet in slow motion, while Jessica clapped like he just scored the winning touchdown at the Super Bowl. Trevor giving a toast about the one that got away, while I sat there like a decorative houseplant. Trevor and Jessica slow dancing, while everyone whispered, and I contemplated whether it's possible to fake your own death at a wedding reception. The horror movie playing in my brain was so vivid I could practically hear the dramatic music. He's practically family, Jessica continued, spooning more pasta onto her plate like she hadn't just blown up our relationship. We grew up together. He was there for all the big moments. It would be weird not to have him there. Weird. She said it would be weird. You know what's weird, Jessica? Inviting your ex-boyfriend, sorry, ex-lover, because apparently we're using romance novel terminology now, to a family wedding and expecting your husband to smile and nod like some kind of domesticated golden retriever. That's weird. That's not just weird. That's a whole new category of bizarre that scientists haven't even discovered yet. That's like inviting a shark to a swimming party and getting mad when people are concerned about the whole teeth situation. Her mom chimed in. Bless her oblivious heart. Oh, Trevor. I haven't seen him in ages. Such a nice young man. Remember when he fixed our garage door? Yeah, I bet he did. I bet he fixed a lot of things around here. Probably why Jessica thought it was totally cool to invite him to witness her sister pledge eternal love to someone while I sat there wondering if my marriage certificate came with a return policy. I nodded again, because apparently that's all I was capable of doing. Just nodding like one of those dashboard bobbleheads. Sure, honey. That makes total sense. Your ex-lover at a family wedding. Why didn't I think of that? The sarcasm was so thick you could spread it on toast, but somehow it flew right over everyone's heads. Her dad even agreed with me, saying something about how it's good to stay friends with people from your past. Right. Friends. Is that what we're calling it? Jessica reached over and squeezed my hand, giving me this smile that probably worked on me back when I was young and stupid. Wait. That was like 3 hours ago. I knew you'd understand. This is why I love you. You're so secure and confident. Secure and confident. Translation. You're such a pushover I can literally invite my ex to a family event and you'll just sit there eating carbs like nothing happened. Cool. Cool, cool, cool. That's definitely what every man wants to hear. Hey babe, I love how you don't have a spine. It really works for me. The rest of dinner was a blur of forced smiles and mechanical chewing. I don't even remember what we talked about. Probably the wedding decorations or some nonsense about table settings. Meanwhile, my brain was doing backflips trying to figure out how this became my life. When did I become the guy who just accepts that his wife's ex is going to be front and center at a family wedding? When did I lose the ability to say absolutely not, like a normal person with functioning self-respect? Her sister, the bride-to-be, didn't even seem surprised. Oh yeah, Trevor. He should totally come. Remember when he organized that surprise party? They all started reminiscing like Trevor was some kind of family legend, this mythical figure who walks on water and cures diseases in his spare time. I sat there wondering if I was having a stroke or if this was just what modern relationships look like now. Maybe I missed a memo. Maybe there was some kind of update to the marriage handbook that said, Chapter 47, enthusiastically support your wife's decision to invite her ex to family functions. By the time we left, I had eaten enough lasagna to feed a small village and developed what I'm pretty sure was the beginning of a stress ulcer. Jessica hummed along to the radio on the drive home, completely oblivious to the fact that I was having an existential crisis in the passenger seat. She even reached over and held my hand at a red light, squeezing it affectionately like we were in some kind of medication commercial about couples who figured life out. We pulled into our driveway, and she kissed my cheek. Thanks for being so understanding about Trevor. I knew you'd be cool about it. Cool about it. Yeah, I was cool about it the same way the Titanic was cool about that iceberg. Sure, everything looks fine on the surface, but underneath? Complete and total disaster waiting to happen. I smiled, kissed her back, and walked into our house wondering at what point I'd completely lost control of my own life. Was it gradual, or did it happen all at once? Either way, I was pretty sure I'd just agreed to the most uncomfortable wedding experience of my entire existence, and there wasn't enough garlic bread in the world to make that okay. That night, I couldn't sleep. Not even a little bit. I just lay there staring at the ceiling fan going around and around like my thoughts, which were spiraling faster than a tornado in Kansas. Jessica was in the living room humming some cheerful tune while folding napkin swans for her sister's wedding. Napkin swans. Because apparently when you invite your ex-lover to a family wedding, you also need decorative waterfowl made of linen. The humming was driving me insane. It was so carefree, so blissfully unaware of the absolute dumpster fire she'd just lit in our marriage. Meanwhile, I was lying in bed having a full mental breakdown, wondering if this is what a midlife crisis feels like, or if I'm just finally seeing things clearly for the first time. I couldn't take it anymore. I got up, grabbed my laptop, and planted myself at the kitchen table with the determination of a man on a mission. If Jessica thought she could just casually drop, I invited my ex to the wedding, and expect me to roll over like a trained seal, she had another thing coming. I wasn't going to make a scene or start a fight, because let's be real, that never works out well for the husband, but I was definitely going to do some research. Call it due diligence. Call it self-preservation. Call it whatever you want. But I was about to become a detective, and my only tools were Google, social media, and an unhealthy amount of spite. Finding Trevor took exactly 2 clicks. 2. I typed his name into Facebook and boom. There he was, shirtless profile picture and all. Because of course he had a shirtless profile picture. You know what kind of men post shirtless selfies when they're in their 40s? Men who peaked in high school and are desperately clinging to the glory days like a life raft. Men who think their abs are a personality trait. Men who comment, looking good, with fire emojis on women's vacation photos. Trevor was exactly that guy. I could tell just from scrolling through his page for 30 seconds. His About section said he was married. Married. To someone named Monica. Not Rebecca, like my darling wife had told me. Rebecca, who was supposedly traveling through Europe for work, living her best eat, pray, love fantasy somewhere between Paris and Rome. Nope. Her name was Monica, and according to her Facebook page, she wasn't gallivanting through European cobblestone streets. She was right here, 20 minutes away, working as a dental hygienist and posting pictures of her cat, named Whiskers. She had a whole album dedicated to that cat. Whiskers at Christmas. Whiskers in a bow tie. Whiskers judging Trevor from across the room, which honestly felt very appropriate given what I was discovering. I started piecing things together like I was working a crime scene on one of those detective shows my dad watches. Trevor's Facebook showed he was married to Monica 3 years ago. The wedding photos were still up, him in a tux looking smug, her in a white dress looking genuinely happy. There were vacation photos from last summer at some beach resort. There were dinner photos, couple selfies, all the normal stuff that married people post when they're trying to convince the internet that their lives are perfect. But here's the thing that made my detective senses tingle. His relationship status said married, but he never tagged Monica in anything. Not once. All his posts were solo shots or him with his bros at sports bars, holding beers and making that stupid face guys make when they think they look cool, but really just look constipated. I clicked over to Monica's page, and that's where things got interesting. Her posts were normal. Work stuff, cat stuff, motivational quotes about strong women that should have been a red flag for Trevor if he had 2 brain cells to rub together. But what really caught my attention was a post from 2 weeks ago. Some people really think you won't find out the truth. Spoiler alert, you always do. Cryptic, ominous. The kind of post that makes you go, oh damn, somebody's in trouble. The comments were full of her friends with those emoji reactions. The angry face, the crying face, the heart. Her best friend commented, "You deserve so much better, girl," with about 17 heart emojis. I sat back in my chair, laptop glowing in the dark kitchen, and I felt this weird mixture of validation and dread wash over me. Validation because clearly something shady was going on with Trevor, and my gut instinct wasn't just paranoid husband syndrome. Dread because now I had to figure out what to do with this information. Do I confront Jessica? Do I pretend I don't know? Do I reach out to Monica and compare notes like we're in some kind of support group for people married to sketchy individuals? The more I scrolled through Trevor's page, the more I wanted to throw my laptop out the window. This guy was a walking red flag factory. He posted gym selfies with captions like grinding and no days off. He shared those cringy motivational quotes about alphas and lions that guys who've never accomplished anything in their lives love to post. He checked into bars at midnight on weeknights. He commented on Jessica's Instagram posts. Wait, he what? I immediately switched over to Jessica's Instagram, and sure enough, there he was. Trevor had liked every single photo she'd posted in the last 6 months. Every single one. Beach photos, coffee photos, that picture of her making duck face at brunch, he liked them all. And some of them had comments. Looking great as always, with a fire emoji. Gorgeous, with a hard eyes emoji. One from 3 weeks ago just said miss you, with a sad face. Miss you. Miss you. I almost threw the laptop across the room. Instead, I took a screenshot. Then I took about 15 more screenshots of various things because I don't know. Evidence felt important. From the living room, I could still hear Jessica humming and the occasional rustle of napkins being folded into unnecessary bird shapes. She had no idea I was in here unraveling her entire web of lies like I was pulling a thread on a cheap sweater. Part of me wanted to march in there right now and dump all of this in her lap. Hey honey, so Trevor's wife isn't in Europe. She's 20 minutes away flossing people's teeth. And also your ex has been sliding into your comments section like it's his part-time job. Want to explain? But I didn't. Because I'm not an idiot. And I know that confronting someone without a full game plan is how you end up looking like the bad guy. I kept digging. Trevor worked in sales. Shocking, absolutely shocking that this guy was in sales. His LinkedIn said he was a self-motivated closer and a relationship builder, which is corporate speak for, I peaked in college and now I cold call people about insurance. He went to the same high school as Jessica. They were in the same graduating class. I found an old photo from prom. Jessica in an emerald dress, Trevor in a tux that didn't fit right, both of them looking like babies. So they had history, real history. Not just we dated briefly history, but we were high school sweethearts and probably lost our virginity to each other in the back of his mom's minivan history. The more I learned, the worse it got. I found photos of them together from years ago, way before I was in the picture. They looked happy, really happy. The kind of happy that makes you wonder if you're just the rebound that lasted too long. There were comments from mutual friends on old photos. Cutest couple ever. And you two are perfect together. I felt sick. Not like food poisoning sick, but like existential dread sick. Like maybe I've been living like this whole time sick. I glanced at the clock. It was 2 in the morning. I'd been down this rabbit hole for 3 hours, and Jessica still hadn't come to bed. I could hear her out there, probably hot gluing ribbons to mason jars or whatever Martha Stewart nonsense wedding prep required. She had no clue that her husband was sitting in the dark kitchen having a complete crisis of faith in their marriage. And honestly, that felt like the biggest problem of all. She was so comfortable with this Trevor situation that she didn't even consider it might bother me. She didn't lose sleep over it. She didn't question whether it was appropriate. She just invited him and expected me to deal with it like a good little husband. I closed my laptop and sat there in the dark for a while, listening to her hum. And that's when I made a decision. I wasn't going to confront her yet. I wasn't going to blow up and make accusations. No, I was going to be smart about this. Strategic. I was going to reach out to Monica, because if Trevor was playing games, she deserved to know. And if Jessica thought she could invite her ex to this wedding and everything would be fine, well, she was about to find out that two could play at that game. The next morning, I woke up with the kind of purpose usually reserved for people training for marathons or starting pyramid schemes. Jessica was already up, probably bedazzling something wedding-related, and I had my laptop open before I even brushed my teeth. Yeah, I know that's disgusting, but desperate times call for questionable hygiene decisions. I pulled up Monica's Facebook profile again and stared at that message button like it was a nuclear launch code. This was either going to be the smartest move I'd ever made or the dumbest, and honestly, the line between those two things was getting blurrier by the second. I typed out a message, deleted it, typed it again, deleted it again. How do you even start a conversation like this? Hey, you don't know me, but I think our spouses might be having an affair. Too aggressive. Hi, I'm married to your husband's ex-girlfriend, and things are weird. Too vague. I must have written and deleted 15 different versions before I finally settled on something that sounded casual, but also screamed, we need to talk immediately. Hi, I'm the idiot married to the woman who invited your husband to her sister's wedding. Want to come as my +1? I hit send before I could overthink it, then immediately panicked. What if she thought I was insane? What if she showed Trevor and they both laughed at me? What if she was in on whatever was happening and I just handed her ammunition to make my life worse? I closed the laptop and tried to go about my day like a normal person who wasn't potentially torpedoing his marriage via Facebook Messenger. Spoiler alert, I failed miserably. I checked my phone every 30 seconds like I was waiting for lottery results. An hour later, my phone buzzed. My heart literally stopped. I'm talking full cardiac arrest, time slowed down, the whole dramatic movie moment. I opened the message with shaking hands, which felt ridiculous because I'm a grown man and this is Facebook, not a hostage negotiation. But there it was, glowing on my screen in beautiful, glorious text. I'd love to crash the circus. 6 words. 6 perfect words that made me want to do a victory lap around my living room. She got it. She understood. She wasn't just understanding. She was down for whatever chaos was about to unfold. I sat there grinning like an idiot at my phone, probably looking like a psychopath to anyone who might have been watching. Jessica walked by and asked what I was smiling about, and I told her it was a funny meme. A meme. I'm messaging her ex's wife about crashing a wedding, and I'm telling my wife it's a meme. The lies we tell to keep the peace, right? Monica and I started messaging back and forth, and within about 20 minutes, it was clear we were basically the same person living parallel lives of matrimonial deception. She told me Trevor had been working late for months. Working late. The oldest excuse in the cheater's handbook, right up there with my phone died, and she's just a friend. He'd been taking mysterious weekend trips for sales conferences that somehow never appeared on any company calendar. He'd gotten a new phone and suddenly had a password on it. Which, come on, nothing says, I'm definitely not hiding anything, like suddenly password protecting a device you've had lying around unlocked for years. The more we talked, the more the pieces started falling into place like the world's worst jigsaw puzzle. Monica sent me screenshots of text messages where Trevor mentioned having drinks with old friends on nights that coincided perfectly with Jessica's girls' nights out. She showed me credit card statements with charges at restaurants across town. Fancy places, the kind you go to for dates, not business meetings. There was a charge at a hotel. A hotel. In our own city. What possible business reason could there be for checking into a hotel 20 minutes from your own house? Either he's having an affair or he's secretly Batman. And I'm pretty sure Batman has better taste in profile pictures. We compared notes like we were FBI agents building a case against the mob. Every little detail fit together so perfectly it would have been impressive if it wasn't completely destroying our lives. That work conference Trevor went to in March. Jessica had a spa weekend with college friends the same weekend. His late night at the office on Valentine's Day, she'd told me she was helping her sister with wedding planning. It was like watching two puzzle pieces snap together, except instead of revealing a nice picture of a sunset or some puppies, it revealed that our spouses were absolutely, definitely, 100% carrying on behind our backs. By Sunday, Monica and I weren't just strangers sharing suspicions. We were partners. Not in crime exactly, because what we were planning wasn't technically illegal. More like partners in justified revenge. Partners in petty excellence. Partners in making sure that this wedding turned into the kind of event people would talk about for years, and not in a good way. We texted constantly. She'd send me updates about Trevor's suspicious behavior. I'd tell her about Jessica's increasingly weird comments about how excited she was that Trevor was coming to the wedding. We swapped screenshots, shared theories, and built a timeline that would make a detective show writer weep with envy. Monica was funny, too. Like, genuinely hilarious in a dark, sarcastic way that made me wonder how someone this cool ended up married to a douchebag who posts gym selfies. She called Trevor my soon-to-be ex-mistake and referred to his shirtless photos as evidence of a midlife crisis in progress. When I told her about Jessica's napkin swan project, she sent back a gif of someone setting origami on fire. We bonded over the absurdity of it all, the fact that our spouses thought they were being subtle, the audacity of Jessica inviting Trevor to a family wedding, the sheer stupidity of Trevor thinking Monica wouldn't find out eventually. The best part? Monica was all in on my plan. When I suggested she come to the wedding as my plus one, I was like 60% joking, maybe 70. But she was dead serious. "Oh, I'm coming," she texted. "I'm coming, and I'm wearing something that'll make him forget his own name. Then I'm going to ruin his whole year. Maybe his whole life. Haven't decided yet." I loved her energy. This woman was ready for war, and I was just trying to survive. But together, we were unstoppable. We spent hours on the phone that Sunday. Monica told me everything. How Trevor had changed over the past year. How he'd become distant and secretive. How she'd suspected something was wrong, but kept telling herself she was being paranoid. She talked about finding receipts for jewelry she never received, about the time she saw a text notification flash on his phone that just said, "Miss your face," with a heart emoji. She'd confronted him about it, and he'd gaslit her so hard, she ended up apologizing for being suspicious. Classic cheater move. Make the victim feel crazy for having perfectly reasonable concerns. I told her about Jessica's weird behavior too. How she'd been secretive about her phone lately. How she'd started dressing nicer for errands. How she'd been emotionally distant but physically affectionate. Like she was overcompensating for guilt. Monica got it immediately. "Oh yeah, that's cheater behavior 101, she said. They feel guilty, so they act extra nice to make themselves feel better about being trash humans." We laughed about it, but it was that bitter kind of laugh you do when the alternative is crying into a bottle of wine at 3 in the afternoon. By the time we hung up, we had a plan. A beautiful, petty, absolutely perfect plan. Monica would come to the rehearsal dinner as my plus one. We wouldn't tell anyone beforehand. We'd just show up together and watch Trevor's face implode in real time. Jessica would lose her mind. The family would be confused. And we'd finally have our moment of truth, the big reveal where everyone's lies came crashing down like a house of cards in a windstorm. Was it mature? Absolutely not. Was it petty? 100%. Did I care? Not even a little bit. Sometimes you have to fight fire with fire. And if Jessica wanted to invite her ex to a family wedding, then I was going to bring his wife and make it everyone's problem. Monica texted me one last message before bed that night. "This is going to be legendary." I responded with a simple thumbs up, but inside, I was already planning what I was going to wear to this glorious disaster. The week leading up to the wedding was like living in an alternate dimension where I was the only sane person and everyone else had collectively agreed that reality was optional. Jessica went into full wedding coordinator mode, which apparently meant she got to boss everyone around while wearing yoga pants and pretending she wasn't planning to reunite with her ex at her sister's nuptials. Every single day was a new adventure in watching my wife gaslight me so hard I started questioning whether I understood basic English. Monday morning, she cornered me at breakfast with a seating chart that looked like it had been designed by someone having a mental breakdown. Color-coded sticky notes everywhere, arrows pointing in 17 different directions, and right there in the middle of the family table section was a bright pink post-it that said Trevor. Not even Trevor and Monica. Just Trevor. Like his wife didn't exist. Like she was a fictional character Jessica made up to make the whole situation seem less insane. So I've been thinking about seating, Jessica said, stirring her coffee like she was about to present a business proposal and not explain why her ex-boyfriend deserved premium real estate at her sister's wedding. Trevor should sit near us at the family table. You know, since he's practically family and all. I looked up from my cereal, which I'd been eating on autopilot while mentally preparing for whatever nonsense was coming my way. Oh yeah, nothing screams holy matrimony like plopping your ex next to the cake, I said, trying to keep my voice level. Really sets the tone for eternal love and commitment. She frowned at me like I'd just suggested we sacrifice a goat during the ceremony. Don't be insecure. He's practically family. He was there for every major moment of my childhood. My parents love him. My sister adores him. It would be weird if he wasn't at the family table. Insecure. She called me insecure. Let me tell you something about the word insecure. It's what people say when they want you to ignore your perfectly valid concerns and just go along with their garbage behavior. It's the relationship equivalent of calm down, except somehow even more infuriating. I wasn't being insecure. I was being a rational human being who understood that inviting your ex to a family wedding and seating him with the immediate family was, at minimum, weird as hell, and at maximum, a giant red flag visible from space. Right? Family, I said, nodding slowly like I was understanding a concept for the first time. Because nothing says family like the dude you used to sleep with. That's totally normal. I'm sure if I invited my ex-girlfriend to sit at the family table, you'd be completely cool with it, right? Jessica's face did this thing where it went from sweet and reasonable to ice cold in about half a second. That's completely different, and you know it. You barely even talk to your exes. Trevor and I maintained a friendship. A healthy, mature friendship. Something you clearly don't understand. Healthy and mature. Sure, if by healthy and mature, she meant constantly texting and liking each other's Instagram posts at midnight, then yeah, super healthy. Super mature. Absolutely nothing suspicious about that at all. I wanted to throw my phone down on the table and show her all the screenshots I'd been collecting, all the evidence Monica and I had compiled, but I held back. Timing was everything, and this wasn't the moment. Not yet. The rest of the week continued in the same vein. Tuesday, Jessica spent 3 hours on the phone with Trevor discussing the wedding playlist. The wedding playlist. Because apparently his input on music was crucial for her sister's special day. I could hear her laughing from the other room. That specific kind of laugh she used to do when we first started dating. Genuine, unguarded, the kind of laugh that made me fall for her in the first place. Hearing her use it with Trevor felt like getting punched in the stomach by someone wearing brass knuckles made of betrayal. Wednesday, she announced that Trevor was going to give a speech at the reception. He's known the family forever, she explained, like this was the most logical thing in the world. He has so many great stories about growing up with us. It'll be perfect. Perfect, I repeated, the word tasting like ashes in my mouth. Your ex-boyfriend giving a speech at your sister's wedding. That's definitely what every bride dreams of. I'm sure your sister's fiancé is thrilled about that. Her fiancé thinks it's sweet, Jessica shot back. He's not insecure like you're being. He understands that Trevor is part of our family history. There was that word again. Insecure. It was becoming her favorite weapon, and she wielded it like a sword every time I dared to suggest that maybe, just maybe, this entire situation was completely unhinged. I was starting to understand how people get gaslit so hard they end up questioning their own sanity. If I didn't have Monica confirming that yes, this was absolutely crazy, I might have actually started believing I was the problem. Thursday was when things really ramped up. Jessica decided we needed to go shopping for wedding gifts, which somehow turned into her spending 45 minutes on the phone with Trevor discussing what gift they should go in on together. They should go in on together. My wife and her ex-boyfriend were buying a joint wedding gift for her sister. They were coordinating. They were splitting costs. They were acting like a couple buying a gift together, and I was just supposed to stand there in the middle of Bed Bath and Beyond like this was fine. Don't you think you should maybe, I don't know, go in on the gift with me? I suggested, watching her text Trevor about Crystal versus China. Since I'm your actual husband? She didn't even look up from her phone. You can get your own gift if you want. Trevor and I already have a history of doing this. We always bought gifts together for family events. It's tradition. Tradition. Of course it was tradition. Everything with Trevor was either tradition or family, or you're being insecure. I was collecting red flags faster than a communist parade, and she was out here acting like I was the crazy one for thinking any of this was weird. Meanwhile, Monica was texting me updates about Trevor buying new clothes for the wedding and asking her opinion on cologne. The cologne question really got me. This man was preparing for the wedding like he was the groom, not just some random family friend showing up to eat free food and watch someone else get married. Friday afternoon, Jessica laid out her outfit for the rehearsal dinner. It was a dress I'd never seen before, emerald green, the kind that probably cost more than our monthly grocery budget, fitted in all the right places. She was doing her makeup differently too, watching YouTube tutorials on elegant evening looks, when her usual routine was mascara and lip gloss. She was getting ready for this rehearsal dinner like she was the one getting married, and I knew exactly who she was trying to impress. New dress? I asked, trying to sound casual and probably failing miserably. Yeah, I wanted something special for the rehearsal, she said, admiring herself in the mirror. It's an important event. Trevor's going to be there, and you know how he always notices when I make an effort. She said it so casually, so naturally, like she hadn't just admitted that she was dressing up to impress her ex-boyfriend. Like that was a completely normal thing for a married woman to say out loud to her husband. I stood there wondering if I'd accidentally stumbled into a parallel universe where everything was backwards and up was down and wives openly admitted to trying to look good for other men. Right? I said, my voice flat. Wouldn't want to disappoint Trevor. She missed the sarcasm completely, or maybe she just chose to ignore it. Exactly. I knew you'd understand. That phrase. I knew you'd understand. She'd been saying it all week, after every ridiculous announcement about Trevor this and Trevor that. It was her way of shutting down any objections before I could even voice them. Manipulative? Absolutely. Effective? Unfortunately, yes, at least until now. But what she didn't know was that while she was planning her little reunion with Trevor, I was planning something even better. Monica and I had been texting constantly, fine-tuning our plan. She'd found the perfect dress, red, bold, the kind that would make everyone turn and stare when she walked in. We'd coordinated our arrival time down to the minute. We had our story straight about how we met and became friends. Everything was set. Jessica thought she was orchestrating some romantic moment where she'd get to reconnect with Trevor while I sat there like a chump. What she didn't realize was that she was actually setting up her own downfall, and I had front row seats. Saturday morning, the day of the rehearsal dinner, Jessica was practically vibrating with excitement. She must have changed her outfit 3 times, redone her makeup twice, and spritzed herself with enough perfume to choke a horse. I watched her fuss and primp and prepare, and I felt absolutely nothing. No jealousy, no anger, just this cold, calm sense of purpose. Let her have her moment of anticipation. Let her think tonight was going to go exactly how she'd planned it. Because in about 8 hours, her entire world was going to explode, and I was going to enjoy every single second of it. You're picking up my brother from the airport at 6, right? She asked, applying lipstick for the 3rd time. I smiled, nice and easy. Actually, change of plans. I've got a different arrangement. What kind of arrangement? You'll see, I said, grabbing my keys. Trust me, it'll be memorable. She looked confused but didn't press it. She was too busy thinking about Trevor to worry about whatever I was doing. Perfect. Absolutely perfect. I walked out to my car, texted Monica that I was on my way to pick her up, and felt something I hadn't felt in days. Genuine, pure, uncomplicated excitement. Tonight was going to be one for the history books. The rehearsal dinner was being held at some upscale Italian restaurant that Jessica's parents had probably spent a small fortune on. The kind of place with mood lighting, waiters in bow ties, and breadsticks that cost more than a meal at Olive Garden. I pulled up to Monica's house at exactly 5:30, my heart pounding like I was about to rob a bank instead of just bringing my wife's ex's wife to a family dinner. When Monica walked out her front door, I literally had to remind myself to breathe. She looked absolutely incredible. The red dress she'd mentioned wasn't just red. It was fire engine, stop traffic, call the police red. It hugged her in all the right places and had this elegant simplicity that somehow made it even more devastating. Her dark hair was styled in these loose waves that probably took hours but looked effortless, and her makeup was flawless. She looked like she'd just stepped off a runway, or maybe out of a revenge fantasy. Actually, scratch that. She looked exactly like someone who was about to ruin her cheating husband's entire evening, and I was here for every second of it. "Ready to burn this place down?" she asked, sliding into my passenger seat with a smile that could have melted steel. "I was born ready," I said, pulling away from the curb. "Also, you look amazing. Trevor's going to have a stroke." "That's the plan," she said, checking her lipstick in the visor mirror. "I want him to remember exactly what he's throwing away. And then I want to take everything he owns in the divorce." I loved her energy. This woman wasn't just planning to crash a dinner. She was planning to make a statement, file it with the court, and frame it on her wall. We drove to the restaurant making small talk, but underneath the casual conversation, we were both buzzing with nervous energy. This was it. The moment we'd been planning all week. The moment when Jessica and Trevor's little fantasy came crashing down harder than the stock market in 2008. We arrived at the restaurant right on time. I could see Jessica's car already parked out front, which meant she was inside, probably holding court, telling everyone about how wonderful it was that Trevor could make it. I took a deep breath, looked at Monica, and said, "Last chance to back out." She laughed, sharp and fierce. "Not a chance in hell. Let's go make some memories." We walked into that restaurant like we owned the place. I had my hand on Monica's lower back, not in a romantic way, just in a we're together way that would be impossible to misinterpret. The hostess looked confused when I gave my name, probably because the seating chart said I was bringing Jessica's brother, not a gorgeous woman in a red dress that could stop traffic. But she led us back to the private dining room anyway, and that's when the magic happened. The room went silent. Like movie scene silent. Like someone had hit the pause button on reality. Every head turned toward us, and I watched in real time as people's brains tried to process what they were seeing. Jessica was mid-laugh at something Trevor had said, and her face froze in this expression that was half confusion, half horror. Trevor, who'd been leaning against the bar looking smug in his too-tight button-down shirt, went so pale I thought he might actually pass out. His glass of whiskey stopped halfway to his mouth, suspended in midair like someone had cast a freezing spell. "Hi, honey," Monica said, and her voice was sugar-sweet with an undertone of pure venom. She walked straight toward Trevor like a heat-seeking missile locked on target. Surprise. My trip got canceled. The silence got somehow even more silent, which I didn't think was physically possible. You could have heard a pin drop. Hell, you could have heard a feather drift to the floor. Someone's fork clinked against their plate, and it sounded like a gunshot in the dead quiet. Trevor's face was doing this thing where it cycled through about 17 different emotions in 3 seconds. Shock, fear, confusion, panic, and finally settling on, "Oh my God, I'm so screwed." "Monica," he managed to choke out, his voice about 3 octaves higher than normal. "What are you? How did I know about the dinner?" Monica finished for him, her smile never wavering. "Oh, that's a funny story. See, I met your friend Jessica's husband, and we got a talking. Turns out we have so much in common. Like how both our spouses have been lying to us for months." Jessica finally found her voice, though it came out as more of a squeak. "I don't understand. What is she doing here?" I stepped forward, enjoying this way more than I probably should have. "This is Monica, Trevor's wife. You know, the one you said was named Rebecca and was traveling through Europe? Turns out her name is Monica, and she's been right here the whole time. About 20 minutes away, actually. Funny how that works." The room erupted, not in the fun party way, but in the everyone started talking at once and nobody knew what the hell was happening way. Jessica's mom clutched her pearl necklace like she was in a Victorian novel. Jessica's dad looked confused and vaguely angry. The bride-to-be, Jessica's sister, just stared with her mouth hanging open, probably realizing that her rehearsal dinner had just turned into the most dramatic episode of reality TV ever filmed. And Jessica's brother, the one I was supposedly picking up from the airport, walked over and whispered, "Dude, this is the greatest thing I've ever seen." Trevor tried to recover, straightening up and putting on this fake smile that fooled absolutely nobody. "Monica, sweetheart, this is just a family dinner. An old friend's sister is getting married. I told you about this." "No, you didn't," Monica said, her voice cold enough to freeze hell over. You said you had a work conference in Philadelphia? You said you'd be gone all weekend. You definitely didn't mention anything about a rehearsal dinner with your ex-girlfriend who, according to her Instagram, you've been chatting with quite a lot lately. Jessica jumped in, trying to salvage the situation with all the grace of someone falling downstairs. We're just friends. We've always been just friends. This is so inappropriate, showing up here unannounced and making accusations. Just friends, Monica repeated, pulling out her phone. Is that why he bought you jewelry last month? The pearl earrings? The ones I never received but found a receipt for in his car. Jessica's hand flew to her ears, where she was wearing pearl earrings that suddenly looked very expensive and very incriminating. The color drained from her face so fast I thought she might faint. Trevor looked like he wanted the floor to open up and swallow him whole. Honestly, I kind of wanted that too, just so I could watch him fall. Those were a gift from my parents, Jessica stammered, but her hand was still touching the earrings like they were suddenly burning her skin. Really? Monica said, turning to Jessica's parents. Did you buy your daughter pearl earrings last month? Jessica's mom shook her head slowly, looking at her daughter like she was seeing a stranger. No, we didn't. The waiter chose that exact moment to walk in with a basket of breadsticks, took one look at the situation, and immediately backed out of the room like he was defusing a bomb. Smart man. If I were him, I would have run too. This room had more tension than a thriller movie, and we hadn't even gotten to the entrees yet. Trevor was sweating now, actual visible sweat running down his forehead. This is all a misunderstanding. Can we please talk about this privately? No, Monica said firmly. We're way past private conversations. You've been lying to me for months. You've been sneaking around with your ex-girlfriend. You bought her jewelry. You've been texting her at all hours. You told me you were working when you were really planning to come to this dinner and probably trying to relive your glory days or whatever pathetic midlife crisis you're having. Jessica's sister, the bride, finally spoke up. Is this true? Jessica, have you been seeing Trevor behind everyone's backs? Jessica opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again like a fish gasping for air. It's not what it looks like. We were just reconnecting, just talking about old times. It was innocent. Innocent people don't lie about it, I said, and all eyes turned to me. Innocent people don't hide their phones. Innocent people don't buy jewelry for their exes and pretend it never happened. Innocent people don't orchestrate entire wedding invitations to create opportunities to be together. Jessica's dad stood up, his face red with anger. Is this true, Jessica? Have you been carrying on with this man while married? The silence that followed was the loudest thing I'd ever heard. Jessica looked around the room, seeing all the faces staring at her, her parents, her sister, her family, Trevor, Monica, me, and I watched something break inside her. Not in a sad way that made me feel bad, in a way that made me realize she'd been caught, and there was no talking her way out of this one. She started, then stopped. Tears were forming in her eyes, and I knew what was coming. The waterworks. The victim act. The desperate attempt to make everyone feel sorry for her instead of holding her accountable. I just wanted to know if I'd made the right choice. Trevor was my first love. I needed closure. Closure, Monica repeated, her laugh bitter and sharp. Honey, closure is a conversation and moving on. Not months of sneaking around and planning romantic reunions at family weddings. Jessica's mom was crying now too, quiet tears running down her face. Her dad looked like he wanted to flip the table. The bride looked like she was calculating how quickly she could uninvite her own sister from the wedding. And Trevor? Trevor looked like exactly what he was. A 40-something man who'd gambled on reliving his high school glory days and lost everything in the process. I stepped back and let it all unfold, watching the chaos ripple through the room like dominoes falling. This was better than I'd imagined. Better than any revenge fantasy I could have cooked up. Because I hadn't had to do anything except show up with Monica and let the truth speak for itself. Sometimes the best revenge isn't elaborate schemes or dramatic confrontations. Sometimes it's just bringing the receipts and watching the house of cards collapse under its own weight. The dinner, predictably, never happened. People started leaving within minutes. The bride left crying. Jessica's parents left without saying goodbye to anyone. Trevor tried to follow Monica out to the parking lot, but she told him if he came within 10 feet of her, she'd call the police. Jessica just sat there at the table, still wearing those pearl earrings, looking like her entire world had ended. Which, to be fair, it kind of had. Here's the thing nobody tells you about dramatic confrontations. They don't actually end when the big reveal happens. They keep going, like a car crash in slow motion that just refuses to stop crashing. After the initial shock wore off, and people stopped looking like they'd been hit by lightning, the dinner somehow continued. Not because anyone wanted to eat anymore, but because we were all trapped in this Italian restaurant's private dining room like hostages in the world's most uncomfortable social situation. The waiter came back, bless his heart, probably because his manager told him he had to. He looked terrified, like he was approaching a table full of wild animals who might attack at any moment. Should I still bring out the appetizers? He asked in a voice so small, I almost felt bad for him. This poor guy was just trying to make tips, and instead he'd walked into a full-scale domestic warfare situation. Yes, Jessica's dad said, his voice hard as stone. We're all going to sit here and have a civilized meal, and then we're going to sort this mess out like adults. Nobody argued with him. When a man who looks like he's one more surprise away from having a heart attack tells you to sit down and eat, you sit down and eat. So we all took our seats in the most awkward seating arrangement in human history. Monica sat next to me, Jessica sat next to Trevor like some kind of sick joke, and everyone else spread out like they were trying to maintain maximum distance from the explosion zone. The tension was so thick you could have cut it with a knife, which honestly would have been more useful than the butter knives they gave us for the breadsticks. The appetizers arrived, some kind of fancy bruschetta and calamari that probably cost more than my car payment. Nobody touched them. We just sat there, staring at overpriced Italian food while the silence grew heavier and heavier. Finally, Jessica's sister broke it, her voice shaking with barely controlled rage. So, Monica, how long have you and Trevor been married? She asked, and I could tell this was her way of fact-checking everything that had just exploded in her face. Monica took a sip of her water, completely calm, like she was at a book club meeting and not in the middle of destroying two relationships. 3 years. We got married in August. Had a beautiful ceremony at a vineyard upstate. About 150 guests. Trevor cried during the vows. She looked at Trevor, who'd gone pale again. Though apparently he should have saved those tears for when I found out he's been texting his high school girlfriend at 2 in the morning. I wasn't. Trevor started, but Monica cut him off with a look that could have melted steel. Don't, she said simply. Don't lie anymore. We're way past that. Jessica jumped in, trying to salvage something from this disaster. We were just catching up. Old friends reconnecting. There's nothing wrong with that. People maintain friendships with their exes all the time. It's mature. It's healthy. Oh, it's healthy? Monica's laugh was sharp enough to cut glass. Is it healthy to send shirtless selfies to your ex? Because Trevor seems to think that's appropriate friendship behavior. Or how about the text I found that said, I think about you all the time? Is that healthy friendship talk? The table went dead silent again. You could have heard a mosquito sneeze. Jessica's face went through about 12 different colors, finally settling on a shade of red that matched Monica's dress. Her mom gasped like she was in a Victorian novel, and someone had just said a curse word. Her dad's grip on his fork got so tight, I thought he might bend the metal. Jessica, her dad said, his voice dangerously quiet. Please tell me this isn't true. Jessica opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. She looked like a fish that had been yanked out of water and was trying to figure out how to breathe air. It's not. It's being taken out of context. Trevor and I have always been affectionate with each other. That's just how we communicate. That's how you communicate with your ex-boyfriend while married to someone else? Her sister asked, incredulous. What kind of context makes that okay? I decided it was my turn to jump in. I'd been quiet for too long, watching this play out like I was in the audience of a really disturbing play. You want to know what context? I pulled out my phone, loaded up the screenshots Monica and I had been collecting all week. The context where she told me his wife's name was Rebecca and she was in Europe. The context where she invited him to this wedding and wanted him at the family table. The context where she bought a new dress specifically to impress him. The context where she's been lying to me for months. I slid my phone across the table to her dad. He picked it up, squinting at the screen, and I watched his face go from angry to absolutely furious. He scrolled through the screenshots. Text messages, Instagram comments, receipts for jewelry, all of it. Every piece of evidence Monica and I had compiled, laid out like a prosecutor building a case. When he looked up, His eyes were hard. Is this what you've been doing? He asked Jessica. While this man, your husband, has been working to support you, paying for everything, you've been carrying on with Trevor? I wasn't carrying on, Jessica protested, but her voice was weak. We were just talking, just reconnecting. I needed to know if. If what? Her mom asked, and she was crying again. If you married the wrong person? If you made a mistake? You don't figure that out by sneaking around with your ex-boyfriend, Jessica. That's not how marriage works. Exactly, Monica said, and everyone turned to look at her. She was calm, collected, completely in control. See, here's what kills me about this whole thing. You two didn't just reconnect innocently. You planned this. You coordinated this. Trevor told me he had a work conference. Jessica, you invited him to this wedding knowing damn well what you were doing. You both lied to your spouses, snuck around behind our backs, and thought you'd get away with it because what? Because we're too stupid to notice? Nobody thinks you're stupid, Trevor said weakly, finally finding his voice. Really? Monica turned to him, eyebrows raised. Then what did you think was going to happen? That you'd come to this wedding, reconnect with your high school sweetheart, and I'd just never find out? That you could keep lying about where you were and who you were with, and I'd just smile and believe every word? Trevor didn't have an answer for that. He just sat there, looking at his plate like it held the secrets of the universe. Spoiler alert, it didn't. It just had cold calamari on it. The main course arrived, some kind of chicken marsala and roast beef situation that looked delicious and smelled amazing. In any other circumstance, I would have destroyed that food. But right now, eating felt impossible. The waiter set down the plates with shaking hands and practically ran out of the room. I didn't blame him. If I weren't a central character in this drama, I'd have been running too. Jessica's sister picked up her fork, set it down, picked it up again. I can't believe this. I can't believe you did this. This was supposed to be my rehearsal dinner, my special weekend, and you turned it into this. I'm sorry, Jessica said, and the tears were flowing freely now. I'm so sorry. I never meant for any of this to happen. Trevor and I have history. We have this connection. I thought if I saw him again, I'd know for sure if you wanted to leave your husband. I finished for her. That's what this was about? You wanted Trevor at the wedding to see if you still had feelings for him? To see if maybe you made the wrong choice marrying me? The silence that followed was deafening. Jessica didn't deny it. She didn't say anything. She just sat there crying, which was basically a confession without words. Her mom covered her mouth with her hand. Her dad looked like he'd aged 10 years in 10 minutes. And Monica? Monica just smiled, this cold, satisfied smile that said she'd gotten exactly what she came for. The truth, laid bare for everyone to see. Unbelievable, Jessica's brother muttered. He'd been quiet this whole time, just watching the show unfold. You know what the crazy part is? If you'd just been honest, if you'd said, I'm having doubts or I need to sort out my feelings, that would have sucked, but at least it would have been real. But this? Lying and sneaking around and inviting him to the wedding like we're all idiots who wouldn't notice? That's just disrespectful to everyone. Thank you, I said, raising my water glass to him. Finally, someone with sense. He clinked his glass against mine. Dude, I'm on your side. This is messed up. Also, best rehearsal dinner ever. Way better than a normal boring one. His mom shot him a look that could have killed a plant, but he just shrugged. What? I'm just saying what everyone's thinking. Jessica's dad cleared his throat, that authoritative sound that meant he was about to make a pronouncement. I think it's clear that some very poor decisions have been made here. Jessica, Trevor, you both owe your spouses a massive apology. And Jessica, you owe your sister an apology for ruining her rehearsal dinner with your nonsense. Dad, I'm not finished, he said, holding up his hand. I didn't raise you to be a liar. I didn't raise you to sneak around behind your husband's back. And I certainly didn't raise you to disrespect your marriage vows like they mean nothing. I'm disappointed. More than disappointed. I'm ashamed. Those words hit harder than any screaming match could have. Jessica crumpled like a paper bag, sobbing into her napkin. Trevor looked like he wanted to disappear into his chair. And me? I just sat there, feeling this weird mixture of vindication and sadness. Because yeah, I was right. Yeah, I'd proven she was lying. But that didn't make it feel any better. It just made it real. Monica stood up, pushing her chair back with a screech that made everyone jump. Well, this has been enlightening. Trevor, I'll see you at home. We need to have a very long conversation about what happens next. Spoiler alert, It involves lawyers. She turned to me. Thanks for inviting me. Best dinner I never ate. She walked out with her head held high, and honestly, I wanted to give her a standing ovation. That woman had more dignity in her pinky finger than Trevor and Jessica had in their entire bodies combined. I stood up too, because sitting there any longer felt like torture. I'm out too, I said, looking at Jessica. We'll talk later. Or maybe we won't. Haven't decided yet. I left her sitting there, crying into her cold chicken marsala, surrounded by her family and her ex-boyfriend and the ruins of whatever fantasy she'd been living in. The cool night air hit my face as I walked out, and I took the deepest breath I'd taken in weeks. It wasn't over, not by a long shot. But damn, it felt good to finally stop pretending everything was fine. I didn't go home that night. Hell no. Going home would have meant dealing with Jessica, and I wasn't ready for that particular brand of torture yet. Instead, I drove to my buddy Mike's place, the one groomsman who'd been texting me throughout this entire saga with commentary like he was watching the world's best reality show. He opened the door, took one look at my face, and just said, "Beer's in the fridge, guest room's yours. Tell me everything." So I did. I spent 3 hours downloading the entire evening to him. From Monica's dramatic entrance, to Jessica's tearful breakdown, to her dad's disappointment speech that could have won an Oscar. Mike listened like it was the most entertaining thing he'd heard all year, occasionally interjecting with "no way" and "are you serious?" and my personal favorite, "Bro, this is better than Netflix. 5 stars. Would watch again." But the real show was just getting started. Because while I was at Mike's place drinking beer and processing my imploding marriage, Jessica's family was apparently having a come-to-Jesus meeting back at her parents' house. I know this because her brother, the real MVP of that family, was texting me updates like he was a war correspondent reporting from the front lines. "Dad is losing it," the first text said. "Mom won't stop crying. Jessica keeps trying to explain and just making it worse. Then, Dad just asked how much you paid for the wedding deposits. Jessica doesn't know. LOL. Then, holy crap, Dad's face when she said $18,000. Thought he was going to have a stroke." I sat there staring at my phone, watching these updates roll in, feeling this weird sense of detachment. Like I was watching someone else's life fall apart and not my own. $18,000. That's what I'd shelled out for this wedding that was supposedly about celebrating love and family and all that greeting card nonsense. 18 grand for a venue, a caterer, a DJ, flowers, all of it. And for what? So Jessica could orchestrate a reunion with her ex-boyfriend? So she could parade Trevor around her family like some kind of trophy she never got to keep? The next morning, I woke up on Mike's couch. Turns out I never made it to the guest room. To approximately 47 missed calls and about 100 texts. Most were from Jessica, ranging from "we need to talk" to "please come home" to increasingly frantic "where are you" messages. A few were from her mom, asking me to please be reasonable and hear Jessica out. One was from her dad that just said "call me." Short, direct, the kind of text that meant business. I called him first. Partly because he seemed like the only sane person in that family, and partly because I was curious what he had to say that required a phone call instead of a text. "Son," he said when he picked up, and his voice sounded tired, like he'd aged 20 years overnight. "I owe you an apology." Several apologies, actually. I had no idea what Jessica was doing. If I'd known she was carrying on with Trevor, I never would have allowed him at this wedding. I never would have allowed any of this. "I appreciate that," I said. "Because what else do you say? It's not your fault. You didn't know." "No, but I should have," he said. "I should have seen the signs. The way she talked about him, the way she insisted he be included in everything. I thought she was just being nostalgic, you know? Thinking about old times. I didn't realize she was actively trying to what? Rekindle something? Check if she married the wrong person." That last question hung in the air like smoke. "That's what it seems like," I said quietly. She wanted him at the wedding to see how she felt. To see if there was still something there. He was quiet for a long moment. Then, "How much did you pay for the wedding deposits?" 18,000, I said. "Give or take a few hundred." He swore under his breath. "Jessica told me last night she thought you'd only paid a few thousand. She had no idea. She hasn't been involved in any of the planning, has she?" "Not really," I admitted. "She picked her dress and had opinions about flowers, but all the actual work? The contracts, the payments, the coordination? That was me." She was too busy with other things. By which I meant too busy texting Trevor and planning this elaborate reunion, but I didn't say that out loud. I'm writing you a check, he said firmly. For the full amount. You're not eating that cost because my daughter decided to throw her marriage away for a high school fantasy. I started to protest, but he cut me off. This isn't up for discussion. You put that money down in good faith, believing you were marrying into a family that valued commitment and honesty. Jessica violated that faith. The least I can do is make sure you're not financially destroyed by her poor choices. We talked for a few more minutes, him apologizing profusely, me trying to reassure him that none of this was his fault. When we hung up, I felt this weird mixture of relief and sadness. Relief that at least someone in that family understood how messed up this situation was. Sadness that it had come to this at all. Then I had to deal with Jessica. She showed up at Mike's place around noon. Apparently her brother had cracked under pressure and told her where I was. Mike opened the door, looked at her, looked at me, and said, "I'll be in my room. Yell if you need backup or witness protection." Jessica walked in wearing yesterday's makeup, which had clearly been cried off and never fixed. Her hair was a mess. She was wearing yoga pants and one of my old college sweatshirts, which felt like some kind of manipulation tactic. Like she was trying to remind me of better times when things were simple and she wasn't sneaking around with her ex. "Please," she said before I could even speak. "Please, baby, just let me explain." "Explain what?" I asked, staying seated on the couch, making her stand. Power move? Maybe. Petty? Absolutely. Did I care? Not even a little bit. Explain how you invited your ex to your sister's wedding? Explain how you lied about his wife's name and location? Explain the jewelry? The texts? The fact that you wanted him at the family table like he was more important than me. "It's not what it looks like," she said, and I actually laughed. "Jessica, that's what guilty people say when it's exactly what it looks like. You were having an emotional affair with Trevor. At minimum. Maybe more. I don't even know anymore. You lied to me repeatedly. You gaslit me when I questioned it. You called me insecure for having completely reasonable concerns. And you did all of this while I was planning and paying for a wedding that you apparently weren't even sure you wanted." She started crying, right on cue. "I do want to marry you. I love you. I choose you. Trevor was he was a mistake. A moment of weakness. I got caught up in nostalgia and what-ifs. But when I saw you with Monica last night, when I saw how hurt you were, I realized what I was throwing away." "You realized when you got caught?" I corrected. "Not before. Not when you were texting him at 2 a.m. Not when you were buying a new dress to impress him. Not when you were actively lying to my face about who he was and what he meant to you. You realized when there were consequences. That's not the same thing as actually being sorry." She moved closer, trying to touch my arm, but I pulled away. "Please, please, baby. I'll do anything. I'll cut off all contact with Trevor. I'll go to couples therapy. I'll do whatever it takes. Just don't give up on us." "Us," I repeated. "There hasn't been an us for months, Jessica. There's been me, thinking we had a solid relationship. And then there's been you, living in some fantasy where you could have your cake and eat it too. Where you could be married to me, but keep Trevor on the back burner, just in case. That's not fair." "Fair?" I stood up, finally losing my cool. "You want to talk about fair? Fair would have been you being honest about your feelings. Fair would have been you saying, 'I'm having doubts,' instead of orchestrating this whole elaborate scheme. Fair would have been you respecting me enough to not humiliate me in front of your entire family by inviting your ex to a wedding while pretending everything was fine." She was full-on sobbing now, that ugly crying where you can barely breathe. Part of me wanted to comfort her. That's the thing about loving someone for years. The instinct doesn't just disappear overnight. But a bigger part of me, the part that had been lied to and manipulated and gaslit for months, just felt empty. "I need time," I said finally. "I need space to figure out what I want. Because right now I don't even know if I know who you are anymore. The woman I married wouldn't have done this. But you did. So either you've changed, or I never really knew you in the first place. Either way, I need time to process that." She tried to argue, tried to convince me to come home, but I held firm. Eventually, she left, defeated and still crying. Mike emerged from his room the second the door closed. "That was brutal," he said. "Yeah," I agreed, collapsing back onto the couch. "You okay?" "Honestly, I have no idea." My phone buzzed. A text from Jessica's brother. "Dad wired you the money. Also, Found something you need to see. Attached was a screenshot of a text conversation between Jessica and Trevor from 2 weeks ago. Trevor, can't wait to see you at the wedding. Think we should tell them. Jessica, let me see how I feel in the moment. Maybe if it feels right. I stared at that screenshot, feeling the last little bit of doubt evaporate. They'd planned this. They'd actively discussed disrupting the wedding, potentially objecting or making some kind of scene. This wasn't just an emotional affair or a moment of weakness. This was calculated, premeditated. They'd been building up to something, and the only thing that stopped them was Monica and I blowing up their plan first. I forwarded the screenshot to Jessica's dad with a message, in case you needed more evidence that this was deliberate. His response came within seconds. Jesus Christ. Yeah, pretty much summed it up. Jesus Christ indeed. I'd gone into that rehearsal dinner thinking I was just going to expose some light cheating, maybe some inappropriate texting. What I'd actually uncovered was something way worse, a full-blown conspiracy to blow up the wedding, probably so Jessica could have her big romantic movie moment with Trevor while I sat there like an idiot. The wedding was supposed to be in 2 days. I texted Jessica's sister. I'm sorry your rehearsal dinner turned into a disaster. For what it's worth, you deserve better than having your wedding overshadowed by Jessica's drama. She responded, thank you. Also, you're way too good for her. Hope you find someone who actually deserves you. That message made me smile for the first time in 24 hours. At least someone in that family had their priorities straight. I spent the rest of the day at Mike's, ordering pizza, playing video games, and trying not to think about the fact that my marriage was basically over. The wedding I'd spent 18 grand on wasn't happening. And somewhere out there, Jessica was probably still trying to figure out how to spin this situation, so she came out looking like the victim instead of the villain. Good luck with that, I thought. Because the truth was out now, screenshots and all. And the truth, as they say, was a real pain in the ass when you'd been lying for months. You know what nobody warns you about when your marriage implodes? The apology tour. Jessica launched into full damage control mode about 36 hours after the rehearsal dinner disaster. And let me tell you, it was something to behold. She pulled out every trick in the manipulation playbook, and I got to watch it all unfold like I was studying for a master's degree in how not to fix a relationship. It started with the text messages. Hundreds of them. I'm so sorry. I made a mistake. You're the only one I want. Please give me another chance. They came in waves, sometimes one every few minutes, sometimes clusters of 5 or 6 at once when she was really spiraling. Reading them felt like watching someone throw spaghetti at a wall to see what stuck. Spoiler alert, none of it stuck. Turns out when you lie to someone for months and try to reconnect with your ex at a family wedding, I'm sorry, via text doesn't really cut it. When the text didn't work, she moved on to phone calls. I let them all go to voicemail because I wasn't ready to hear her voice do that thing where it gets all soft and vulnerable, like she's the victim in this situation. I listened to the voicemails later though, out of morbid curiosity, and they were exactly what you'd expect. Crying, apologies, promises to change, declarations of love. You're my everything, one said. I can't lose you, said another. The third one was just sobbing for 2 minutes straight, which honestly felt more authentic than the scripted-sounding ones. Then came the surprise visit to my apartment. I'd moved some of my stuff out of our house and into a short-term rental because staying at Mike's couch forever wasn't exactly a long-term solution. I was unpacking boxes, listening to music, trying to convince myself that starting over at 30-something wasn't the end of the world when there was a knock at my door. I opened it, and there she was. Jessica, wearing lingerie under a trench coat. Like she was in some kind of noir film, except instead of being mysterious and alluring, she just looked desperate and cold because it was 40 degrees outside and she was basically naked under that coat. Baby, she said, her voice doing that breathy thing that used to work on me back when I was young and stupid. Please, let me show you how sorry I am. Let me remind you what we have together. I stood in the doorway, blocking her entrance, holding a beer I'd been drinking while I unpacked. For a second, I just looked at her, really looked at her. This woman I'd been with for years, who I'd planned to marry, who I'd trusted completely. And all I felt was tired. Just bone deep, soul-crushing tired. Jessica, put some clothes on. It's 40 degrees out here. I don't care about the cold, she said, moving closer. I only care about you. About us. Please, let me in. Let me prove that I choose you. That I've always chosen you. You chose Trevor. I said, taking a sip of my beer. Real casual, like we were discussing the weather and not the smoking ruins of our relationship. You chose him every time you texted him at 2 a.m. Every time you liked his Instagram posts. Every time you lied about where you were or who you were with. You chose him when you invited him to the wedding. You chose him when you bought that dress to impress him. You chose him when you discussed disrupting your sister's wedding to be with him. So no, you haven't always chosen me. You chose me after you got caught. That's not the same thing. Her face crumpled. The sexy seductress act fell away, and she was just cold and desperate and starting to cry again. Please don't do this. Please don't throw away everything we have over one mistake. One mistake, I repeated, and I actually laughed. Couldn't help it. Jessica, this wasn't one mistake. This was months of deliberate choices. This was planning and scheming and lying. One mistake is forgetting an anniversary. One mistake is snapping at your partner when you're stressed. This was a whole elaborate production. She tried to push past me into the apartment, but I held firm. Go home, Jessica. Put some clothes on before you catch pneumonia. We can talk later, but not like this. Not when you're trying to manipulate me with sex because your tears and apologies didn't work. She stood there for a long moment, shivering in her trench coat, mascara running down her face. Then she turned and left without another word. I watched her get into her car and drive away, and I felt absolutely nothing. No guilt for rejecting her. No satisfaction from standing my ground. Just that same overwhelming tiredness. I closed the door, finished my beer, and went back to unpacking. 20 minutes later, my phone started blowing up. Not with calls or texts from Jessica this time, but with notifications from Facebook. Because apparently when the lingerie gambit fails, you move on to public manipulation. Jessica had posted on Facebook a long, rambling post about how relationships are hard, how people make mistakes, how some partners are too controlling and refuse to forgive. She didn't name me specifically, but she didn't have to. Everyone knew. Our relationship status had been public, our photos together were all over both our profiles, and anyone with 2 brain cells could figure out who she was talking about. Sometimes you realize you're with someone who will never let you have friends or a life of your own, the post said. Someone who gets jealous of your past and tries to isolate you from people you've known your whole life. I'm learning that forgiveness is essential in relationships. And if someone can't forgive you for being human and making mistakes, maybe they're not the right person after all. I stared at my phone, reading this absolute fiction, feeling my blood pressure rise for the first time since this whole thing started. Controlling? I'd literally encouraged her hobbies, her friendships, her career. Jealous of her past? I'd been fine with her staying friends with exes until one of those exes became a full-blown emotional affair she tried to hide. Isolate her? The only person I'd had a problem with was Trevor, and that was because he was actively trying to destroy our marriage. The comments started rolling in. Friends of hers, people who didn't know the full story, offering support. You deserve better. Don't let anyone dim your light. Some people are just too insecure to handle a strong woman. I watched it happen in real time. This narrative being built where I was the villain and she was the victim, where months of lying and cheating became being human and making mistakes, and my completely reasonable decision to not immediately forgive her became me being controlling. I was about to comment, about to set the record straight, when my phone rang. Monica, I answered, and before I could even say hello, she said, have you seen Jessica's Facebook post? Unfortunately, yes. Don't comment, she said immediately. I know you want to. I wanted to when Trevor tried the same thing. But don't. It makes you look defensive, and defensive looks guilty to people who don't know the full story. So I just let her lie about me publicly? No, Monica said, and I could hear the smile in her voice. You let me handle it. I've got screenshots of everything, the text between Trevor and Jessica, the receipts for the jewelry, all of it. I'm going to post a very factual, very detailed timeline of events. No emotions, no drama, just facts. When people see actual evidence instead of vague accusations, they'll figure out who's really telling the truth. She was right, of course. Going back and forth with Jessica in the comments would just make us both look bad. But hard evidence? Screenshots? Receipts? That was different. That was letting the truth speak for itself. Monica posted 20 minutes later. A long, organized comment with time-stamped screenshots, credit card receipts, and text message conversations. She laid out everything. how Trevor had lied about the work conference, how Jessica had lied about Trevor's wife being in Europe, how they'd been planning to potentially disrupt the wedding, all of it. She was clinical, factual, almost boring in her delivery, which made it even more devastating. The comments on Jessica's post shifted immediately. Her friends stopped offering blind support and started asking questions. Wait, is this true? Jessica, can you explain these screenshots? This is really concerning if these texts are real. Jessica tried to delete Monica's comment, but Monica had posted it as a separate post and tagged mutual friends. The truth was out there now, floating in the digital ether, impossible to take back. My phone started buzzing with texts from friends I hadn't heard from in weeks. Mike sent me a gif of someone eating popcorn with the caption, "This is amazing." My college roommate texted, "Bro, Monica is a savage. Marry her instead." Even my mom called, having somehow gotten wind of the Facebook drama through the mysterious Parent Information Network, asking if I was okay and offering to come down there and give that girl a piece of my mind. Jessica's post got deleted within an hour, but the damage was done. Screenshots had been taken. The story had spread. Her attempt to paint herself as the victim had backfired spectacularly, and now everyone knew the real story. Not her twisted version where I was some controlling monster, but the actual truth where she'd carried on an emotional affair and got caught. She tried to call me 17 times that evening. I didn't answer any of them. What was there to say? She'd shown me exactly who she was, someone willing to lie publicly, to manipulate the narrative, to paint me as the bad guy, rather than take responsibility for her actions. Every time I'd thought she couldn't go lower, she'd found a basement I didn't know existed. Monica texted me around midnight. Trevor tried to call me 38 times today. I blocked his number. How many times did Jessica call you? 17. I texted back. Rookie numbers. She responded with a laughing emoji. Want to get coffee tomorrow and compare notes on our imploding marriages? You're on, I wrote back. We met the next morning at a Starbucks halfway between our places. Monica looked tired but determined, like a general planning military strategy over a latte. We sat in the corner, laptops out, going through divorce attorney websites like we were shopping for cars. You're really doing it? I asked. Divorcing him? Already filed the paperwork, she said. I'm done. I gave him 3 years, and he spent probably half of that lying to me and sneaking around with his ex. I could forgive a lot of things, but not that. Not the systematic lying. Not the planning to humiliate me at a public event. I'm worth more than that. Yeah, I said, thinking about Jessica showing up at my apartment in lingerie, about her Facebook post, about months of manipulation and lies. Yeah, we are worth more than that. We clinked our coffee cups together like they were champagne glasses. Two people who'd walked into relationships believing in love and commitment, walking out with lawyer recommendations and trust issues. It wasn't the ending either of us had planned, but it was honest. It was real. And honestly, that felt better than staying in relationships built on lies, no matter how much it hurt. The check from Jessica's dad arrived on a Friday morning. $18,000, with a handwritten note. I'm sorry my daughter put you through this. You deserved better. I stood there holding it, feeling this weird mixture of relief and sadness. The money was back, but the future I'd imagined with that family was gone forever. Monica texted around the same time. Lawyer meeting went well. Trevor's getting destroyed in this divorce. He's losing the boat, the house, everything. I sent back a thumbs up because honestly, good. They both deserved whatever consequences were coming their way. But the real bombshell came that evening. Jessica's brother sent me another screenshot, text between Jessica and Trevor from 3 weeks before the rehearsal dinner. My hands shook reading it. Trevor, so what's the plan? Are we really doing this? Jessica, when I see you at the wedding, I'll know for sure. Maybe during the objections part. Dramatic, but honest. She'd planned to object. At her own sister's wedding. To announce she wanted Trevor instead of me, in front of everyone. The only reason it didn't happen was because Monica and I had blown up their plan first. I forwarded the screenshot to Jessica's dad. His response, Jesus Christ. Yeah, pretty much summed it up. The wedding day came and went without me. Instead of watching Jessica cry into her mascara at a ceremony that wasn't happening, I played golf with the guys and ate the best steak of my life. Jessica apparently showed up at the venue anyway, in her wedding dress, alone, posting Instagram captions like, "the wedding that should have been," with sad face emojis. The comments section roasted her harder than that steak I'd eaten. People weren't buying the victim narrative anymore. 3 months later, the dust had settled into something resembling a new normal. Jessica was living at her parents' house, posting inspirational quotes about survival that nobody liked. Trevor was in a studio apartment, boatless and bitter. Monica was thriving, dating some doctor who actually respected her. And me? I took that 18 grand and went to Italy. Spent 2 weeks eating pasta, drinking wine, and taking a cooking class in Tuscany. That's where I met Anna, smart, funny, with a laugh that sounded like freedom instead of betrayal. When I told her this whole story over homemade tiramisu, she laughed so hard she cried. Your ex planned to object at her sister's wedding? She asked, eyes wide. Yep. And you brought the other guy's wife as your date? Yep. She grinned. That's the most American thing I've ever heard. You're crazy. Maybe I was. But at least I was free.